Hello and welcome to my latest podcast. The sun is shining, the barbecues are being dusted off, and the press have rejoiced in the fact that borders are opening and that you will be able to have that Spanish holiday. Whoa! Let's put the brakes on this right now. Yes, some borders are opening, but gaining access to your favourite Spanish or Greek hotel is not going to be that straightforward. Greece has declared that they will test on entry, and if negative, you will still have to isolate for 7 days, or 14 if you test positive. Spain has declared that they are testing entry with foreign nationals coming from countries that have the same equivalence or COVID health model as they do. The UK is not currently invited. The UK has declared a quarantine for 14 days, whether you're a visitor or a returning holidaymaker. So getting to your favourite hotspots is not going to be that easy. However, Europe's airlines would have you believe that this is not the case, because they are ready to fly whatever the situation. In recent days, we have seen the Ryanair and EasyJet videos of the measures that they are taking, and I've noted that there's a difference in each of their approaches. Airbus did a live broadcast the other day to tell us how safe flying is, with some protective measures, and because of the air conditioning technology deployed within their types of aircraft. So it's back to normal, is it? Well, about 2 weeks ago, I was asked and subsequently invited to attend a meeting as a passenger stakeholder in the UK's Department of Transport sponsored Aviation Health Panel. I duly received the invitation email along with my login details and several documents that we were invited to consider ahead of the meeting. Now, I had a meeting clash, so I decided to invest time over the bank holiday weekend to examine the documentation and submit my comments in writing. Several days later, my meeting clash resolved itself, and I advised them that I will be attending the meeting. About 2 hours before the meeting, I received a message questioning my invitation. I duly produced the invitation. I was then advised that my expertise didn't fit the content of the meeting, as it was principally about the air conditioning system of the aircraft. I responded by pointing out that I represented the UK in the creation of an European standard that would improve cabin air quality. I therefore understood the air conditioning system on aircraft. Despite all of this, I was disinvited with a promise that I would be updated by telephone. I am still waiting. And furthermore, I'm waiting for the call from the Department of Transport, as I believe that they are creating a consumer charter for air passengers and COVID. Now, into this mix, there is the complication of that UK quarantine that I talked about. Much froth, much lobbying, applying pressure on a government that seems incapable of creating a coherent strategy. The quarantine is watered down so much that I doubt its effectiveness. But that is not to say that the quarantine should not be introduced, along with a package of measures such as isolating on arrival, questioning, testing, followed up by a robust quarantine as in Hong Kong or shortly in Greece. We now hear that one major airline is considering taking the UK government to court to stop the quarantine. But there is a flip side to the coin. The argument seems to be that we are not at risk from those coming in, but we are presumably to ourselves because we are behind the COVID curve. And whilst that may have some merit, there are other considerations perhaps other countries will consider. So, for example, EASA, the European Aviation Safety Agency, has issued a document detailing high-risk countries. There are a few through Europe, but the biggest high-risk country is the UK. This document is warning receiving countries of that risk, and all of the UK's airports are listed. That then suggests that we should not be surprised if we are not invited to join the travel bubbles just yet. But we should also not be surprised if other countries are tougher on us when we arrive in their shores. Secondly, other countries will look at this information and could consider their citizens and advise them not to visit the UK. That's the flip side, and the airline who may sue may get their pound of flesh, but they may be faced with the reality of restrictions from elsewhere. So that's the background to your summer holiday, and one that I and many other campaigners have predicted. In my opinion, when it comes to flying, we have to pay particular attention to the science. Yes, it's that phrase again, and I think that's important when it comes to aircraft and airports. So the current debate, as I have seen it, talks about, for example, isolation rooms or safe areas at airports, which, as I understand it, has now been rejected. Then there is talk of masks, hand gels and screens at airports, but not so much on social distancing. Airport staff will receive PPE kit, but passengers appear to be limited to masks. The Ryanair video talks of the measures it is putting in place, so for example disinfection, no queuing for the toilet, masks and covered drinks. But interestingly, the video shows the passenger wearing protective gloves, but the cabin crew member is not. I have even seen an email from a senior member from a UK airline who has dismissed the wearing of gloves as not proven to be effective, but didn't produce the study that they're relying on. Interesting when you consider that shop assistants, petrol stations and medical staff either wear or are required or you're recommended to wear gloves, presumably to prevent the spread of germs or exposure to chemicals on your skin. On social distancing, European airlines are, it seems, reluctant, for example, leaving the middle seat free or distancing between rows, as is seen on the 22nd of April 2020 when Mr. O'Leary from Ryanair stated that he would not fly if idiotic rules were put in place. It wasn't that long ago when he was predicting that we would all be returning to the skies for our Easter holidays. That prediction hasn't stood well over time, has it? Then there are some in industry who brazenly and perhaps quietly claim that there is no proof that people have been infected when flying. This doesn't quite sit with some early advice in this crisis, reference back to the WHO, that an infected person can infect others up to 2 rows around them and even further. So, as the Department of Transport considers the science, maybe they'd like to consider the following. There's been a study carried out on a cruise ship showing that the numbers of those infected within the confines of the ship was high. Another scientific study referred to the confined settings of a cruise ship and how infection can spread more quickly than, say, in a community setting. By its very design, the aircraft is a confined space or setting, and being contained for several hours without effective measures surely increases the risk of cross-infection. But I see no evidence that the airline industry is subscribing to that simple fact. Then there is the question of how long a virus will stay on surfaces. One study suggests that it can remain on plastics, aircraft interiors are mainly plastic, for up to 72 hours. What about clothing, which may have some plastics within? The airlines are talking about disinfection every 24 hours, with, they hope, many flights and passengers in between. And they also hope that air droplets will fall to the ground because of the air conditioning systems on aircraft. The World Economic Forum provides a useful guide for passengers, which is US-centric, but highlights the use of technical systems in aircraft to reduce infection. For example, high-efficiency HEPA filters. Now, whilst I was subscribed to that, and I've noted aviation bodies only talk of recommending the use of HEPA filters, I would suggest that the use of carbon-activated HEPA filters would be of greater benefit to reduce the potential risk of exposure to COVID-19. You can see, I hope, the theme developing here. A reluctance, a reticence. Let's just go down the light touch regulation route. Or is it a compulsion of the business model, where everything is centred on what they call shareholder primacy, the ultimate corporatism? Shouldn't COVID-19 tell the aviation industry and indeed government that shareholder primacy should be replaced by a stakeholder corporatism? Wouldn't that be a panacea to their relationships with consumers? But I'll leave that one for another podcast. So whilst I am perhaps constructively critical of aviation's response to this great difficulty that they face, I have also made it known that I think that the passengers should be an important part of the measures that need to be taken. They, the passengers, need to think of partnership. So, what do I recommend passengers do if they intend to fly? Well, I think you should take the following personal actions above what is required of you by the state authorities or indeed the airlines themselves. So, firstly, be realistic about your health. Don't just act on the desire to travel, act in what is in the best interests of you and your family. Keep alert to any changing health issues you may face and seek medical advice at the earliest opportunity. Make sure you pack hand gel on your journey, use repeatedly. Bring disinfectant wipes so that you can clean the soap dispenser at the airport or wipe down the side of the aircraft wall you are sitting next to, the seat back in front, its table, the armrests, and of course the seat belt. Make sure that you comply with liquid restrictions. Buy a mask and make sure it is well fitted, and that's important for your children as well. Buy a face visor. These are relatively cheap online. Make sure that you wear it as you enter the airport, on your flight and beyond the flight destination. Remove it when requested for security purposes or in critical safety scenarios. Buy some disposable gloves. Bring plenty with you. Make sure you wear them at all times, except to wash your hands, obviously, or when you are requested to remove them for security or flight critical scenarios. I think you should also buy some disposable arm sleeves. These will protect immediate clothing and the skin not covered by gloves from any potentially infected surfaces or accidentally touching of another. Think about toileting before you board your flight. Difficult with long-haul flights, I know, and particularly with children, but follow the cabin and crew airline instructions, taking care to bring your cleaning wipes with you. Now, these are simple personal measures. Not only do they demonstrate that you are a responsible passenger, but places you at the heart of the measures that should be taken. There is little that we can do about social distancing on board at this time. That is in the remit of airlines and indeed with the government themselves. I really wish the aviation industry and the UK government were a little less closed shop. Who knows? They might actually benefit from a non-aviation establishment outlook. Until the next time, take care.